Today is day 73 of our 365-day Bible read. Today we're going to be reading from the Old Testament, Deuteronomy, chapters 23, 24, and 25, and then we'll do the Bible studies for Deuteronomy, chapters 23, 24, and 25, and then we'll go on over to the New Testament and finish Mark chapter 14 by reading verse 51 through 72, and then we'll do the Bible study for the entire Mark chapter 14. Um, yes, this is exciting. We're almost done with the book of Mark. We have 3 more days of the book of Mark after today, and we have maybe like 5 more days of the book of Deuteronomy after today as well. So, yeah, we'll be knocking 2 more books of the Bible out, one from the Old Testament, one from the New Testament. So that's really exciting. We're like getting through this like really quickly. So I am following the year reading Bible schedule from esv.org. I started from January 1st date. And on today, if you just count from January 1st and count down like whatever the amount, whatever the day is, of the title of the Bible study that I'm reading. So, like today is day 73 of our Bible read. So, just count from January 1st down 73 days, and that's the date that we're on. So, I believe today's date we're on is March. We're on March 14th date on esv.org on their year reading Bible schedule. March 14th date. Just because I started from January 1st instead of starting from like April's date when we first started doing these Bible reads. Yeah, I did it that way because I wanted us to start from the beginning of the Old Testament and the beginning of the New Testament, and read a little bit of each testament every day, but not skipping any books of the Bible and not skipping any chapters, so just reading straight through. So I started January 1st's date. So yes, on esv.org, we're on March 14th. I think I just said March 14th date. Yep, March 14th date from their schedule. And yes, so we're getting through. All right, so I love you guys, and we're going to get started. Okay, so Deuteronomy chapter 23. I'm trying to think if I should read the chapter and then do the Bible study for that chapter right after, and then go back and read the next chapter and do the Bible study, or if I should just read the 3 chapters straight through from Deuteronomy and then move on to the New Testament. I don't know. I'll fill it out as I read. So, okay. Deuteronomy chapter 23. Those excluded from the assembly. No one whose testicles are crushed or whose male organ is cut off shall enter the assembly of the Lord. No one born of a forbidden union may enter the assembly of the Lord. Even to the 10th generation, none of his descendants may enter the assembly of the Lord. No Ammonite or Moabite may enter the assembly of the Lord. Even to the 10th generation, none of them may enter the assembly of the Lord forever, because they did not meet you with bread with water on the way, when you came out of Egypt, and because they hired against you Balaam, the son of Beor, from Pethor of Mesopotamia, to curse you. But the Lord your God would not listen to Balaam. Instead, the Lord your God turned the curse into a blessing for you, because the Lord your God loved you. You shall not seek their peace or their prosperity all your days forever. You shall not abhor an Edomite, for he is your brother. You shall not abhor an Egyptian, because you are a sojourner in his land. Children born to them in the 3rd generation may enter the assembly of the Lord. Uncleanness in the camp. When you are encamped against your enemies, then you shall keep yourself from every evil thing. If any man among you becomes unclean because of a nocturnal emission, then he shall go outside the camp. He shall not come inside the camp. But when evening comes, he shall bathe himself in water, and as the sun sets, he may come inside the camp. You shall have a place outside the camp, and you shall go out to it. And you shall have a trowel with your tools. And when you sit down outside, you shall dig a hole with it and turn back and cover up your excrement. Sorry. Because the Lord your God walks in the midst of your camp to deliver you and to give up your enemies before you. Therefore your camp must be holy, so that he may not see anything indecent among you and turn away from you. Miscellaneous laws. You shall not give up to his master a slave who has escaped from his master to you. He shall dwell with you in your midst in the place that he shall choose within one of your towns. Wherever it suits him, you shall not wrong him. None of the daughters of Israel shall be a co-prostitute, and none of the sons of Israel shall be a co-prostitute. You shall not bring the fee of a prostitute or the wages of a dog into the house of the Lord your God in payment for any vow, for both of these are an abomination to the Lord your God. You shall not charge interest on loans to your brother, interest on money, interest on food, interest on anything that is lent for interest. You may charge a foreigner interest, but you may not charge your brother interest, that the Lord your God may bless you in all that you undertake in the land that you are entering to take possession of it. If you make a vow to the Lord your God, you shall not delay fulfilling it, for the Lord your God will surely require it of you, and you will be guilty of sin. But if you refrain from vowing, you will not be guilty of sin. You shall be careful to do what has passed your lips, for you have voluntarily vowed to the Lord your God what you have promised with your mouth. If you go into your neighbor's vineyard, you may eat your fill of grapes, as many as you wish, but you shall not put any in your bag. If you go into your neighbor's standing grain, you may pluck the ears with your hand, but you shall not put a sickle to your neighbor's standing grain. All right, so that was Deuteronomy chapter 23. Hello to you who have joined. We're now going to do the Bible study for Deuteronomy chapter 23. All right, Deuteronomy chapter 23 Bible study. What people could not enter the assembly of the Lord? An emasculated person, an illegitimately born person, and an Ammonite or Moabite was not allowed into the assembly of the Lord. What were the men in camp to always have with them? The men in camp were always to have an implement to dig to cover their refuse. What was an Israelite never to charge to a fellow countryman who had borrowed anything from him? Do not charge any interest to your brethren. What must you do with your vows to the Lord? All vows to the Lord must be paid, or it will be a sin to the one who made the vow. All right, so that was the Bible study for Deuteronomy chapter 23, and we're now going to go back to the Old Testament and read Deuteronomy chapter 24, and then we'll do the Bible study for that. Deuteronomy chapter 24, laws concerning divorce. When a man takes a wife and marries her, if then she finds no favor in his eyes because he has found some indecency in her, and he writes her a certificate of divorce and puts it in her hand and sends her out of his house, and she departs out of his house, and if she goes and becomes another man's wife, and the latter man hates her and writes her a certificate of divorce and puts it in her hand and sends her out of his house, or if the latter man dies who took her to be his wife, then her former husband who sent her away may not take her again to be his wife after she has been defiled, for that is an abomination before the Lord. And you shall not bring sin upon the land that the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance. Miscellaneous laws. When a man is newly married, he shall not go out with the army or be liable for any other public duty. He shall be free at home 1 year to be happy with his wife whom he has taken. No one shall take a mill or an upper millstone in pledge, for that would be taking a life in pledge. If a man is found stealing one of his brothers of the people of Israel, and if he treats him as a slave or sells him, then that thief shall die. No one shall purge the evil from your midst. Take care in a case of leprous disease to be very careful to do according to all that the Levitical priests all the Levitical priests shall direct you. As I commanded them, so you shall be careful to do. Remember what the Lord your God did to Miriam on the way as you came out of Egypt. When you make your neighbor a loan of any sort, you shall not go into his house to collect his pledge. You shall stand outside, and the man to whom you make the loan shall bring the pledge out to you. And if he is a poor man, you shall not sleep in his pledge. You shall restore to him the pledge as the sun sets, that he may sleep in his cloak and bless you. And it shall be righteousness for you before the Lord your God. You shall not oppress a hired worker who is poor and needy, whether he is one of your brothers or one of the sojourners who are in your land within your towns. You shall give him his wages on the same day, before the sun sets, for he is poor and counts on it, lest he cry against you to the Lord, and you be guilty of sin. Fathers shall not be put to death because of their children, nor shall children be put to death because of their fathers. Each one shall be put to death for his own sin. You shall not pervert the justice due to the sojourner or to the fatherless, or take a widow's garment in pledge. But you shall remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you from there. Therefore, I command you to do this. When you reap your harvest in your field and forget a sheaf in the field, you shall not go back to get it. It shall be for the sojourner, the fatherless, and the widow, that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. When you beat your olive trees, you shall not go over them again. It shall be for the sojourner, the fatherless, and the widow. When you gather the grapes of your vineyard, you shall not strip it afterwards. It shall be for the sojourner, the fatherless, and the widow. You shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt. Therefore, I command you to do this. All right, so that was Deuteronomy chapter 24, and we're now going to do the Bible study for Deuteronomy chapter 24. Deuteronomy chapter 24 Bible study. Could a divorced woman remarry a man from whom she was divorced? A woman could not remarry a man from whom she was divorced if she had married another man. It is an abomination to the Lord. How long must a newlywed man stay home before going to war? A newly married man must stay home 1 year before going to war. What were the Israelites to do with sheaves left in the field at harvest time? Sheaves were left for the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow. All right, so that was the Bible study for Deuteronomy chapter 24. And we're now going to read Deuteronomy chapter 25. And then we'll do the Bible study for Deuteronomy chapter 25. And then we'll go on over to the New Testament and finish Mark 14 by reading verse 51 through 72. And then we'll do the Bible study for the entire Mark chapter 14. And then we'll be done for day 73. All right. I have to drink some water. Okay. All right. Deuteronomy chapter 25. If there is a dispute between men and they come into court, and the judges decide between them, acquitting the innocent and condemning the guilty, then if the guilty man deserves to be beaten, the judge shall cause him to lie down and be beaten in his presence with a number of stripes in proportion to his offense. 40 stripes may be given him, but not more, lest if one should go on to beat him with more stripes, then these your brother be degraded in your sight. You shall not muzzle an ox when it is treading out the grain. Laws concerning levirate marriage. Laws concerning levirate marriage. If brothers dwell together and one of them dies and has no son, the wife of the dead man shall not be married outside the family to a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go in to her and take her as his wife and perform the duty of a husband's brother to her. And the first son whom she bears shall succeed to the name of his dead brother, that his name may not be blotted out of Israel. And if the man does not wish to take his brother's wife, then his brother's wife shall go up to the gate to the elders and say, my husband's brother refuses to perpetuate his brother's name in Israel. He will not perform the duty of a husband's brother to me. Then the elders of his city shall call him and speak to him. And if he persists, saying, I do not wish to take her, then his brother's wife shall go up to him in the presence of the elders and pull his sandal off his foot and spit in his face. And she shall answer and say, so shall it be done to the man who does not build up his brother's house. And the name of his house shall be called in Israel, the house of him who had his sandal pulled off. Miscellaneous laws. When men fight with one another and the wife of the one draws near to rescue her husband from the hand of him who is beating him and puts out her hand and seizes him by the private parts, then you shall cut off her hand. Your eyes shall have no pity. You shall not have in your bag 2 kinds of weights, a large and a small. You shall not have in your house 2 kinds of measures, a large and a small. A full and fair weight you shall have, a full and fair measure you shall have, that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. For all who do such things, all who act dishonestly, are an abomination to the Lord your God. Remember what Amalek did to you on the way as you came out of Egypt, how he attacked you on the way when you were faint and weary, and cut off your tail those who were lagging behind you. And he did not fear God. Therefore, when the Lord your God has given you rest from all your enemies around you in the land that the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance to possess, you shall blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. You shall not forget. All right, so that was Deuteronomy chapter 25 from the Old Testament. And we're now going to do the Bible study for Deuteronomy chapter 25. And then we'll go on over to the New Testament and finish Mark chapter 14 by reading verse 51 through 72. And we'll do the Bible study for Mark chapter 14. And then we'll be done. Okay, so Deuteronomy chapter 25, a Bible study. What was the maximum number of blows a person could receive as punishment? 40 blows was maximum, lest he be humiliated. If a woman's husband died, whose responsibility was it to take her as his wife? The deceased husband's brother should raise a heir for his brother. How were the Israelites' weights and measures to be done? Weights and scales should be just and perfect measures, not done dishonestly. All right, so that was the Bible study for Deuteronomy chapter 25, and we're now going over to the New Testament to finish Mark chapter 14, and we're going to finish it by reading verse 51 through 72, and then we'll do the Bible study for Mark chapter 14. All right. Mark chapter 14, verse 51. Okay. A young man flees, and a young man followed him with nothing but a linen cloth about his body, and they seized him, but he left the linen cloth and ran away naked. Jesus before the council. And they led Jesus to the high priest, and all the chief priests and the elders and the scribes came together. And Peter had followed him at a distance, right into the courtyard of the high priest. And he was sitting with the guards and warming himself at the fire. Now the chief priests and the whole council were seeking testimony against Jesus to put him to death, but they found none, for many bore false witness against him. But their testimony did not agree. And some stood up and bore false witness against him, saying, We heard him say, I will destroy this temple that is made with hands, and in 3 days I will build another, not made with hands. Yet even about this their testimony did not agree. And the high priest stood up in the midst and asked Jesus, Have you no answer to make? What is it that these men testify against you? But he remained silent and made no answer. Again the high priest asked him, Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? And Jesus said, I am. And you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power, and coming with the clouds of heaven. And the high priest tore his garments and said, What further witnesses do you need? You have heard his blasphemy. What is your decision? And they all condemned him as deserving death. And some began to spit on him and to cover his face and to strike him, saying to him, Prophesy. And the guards received him with blows. Peter denies Jesus. And as Peter was below in the courtyard, one of the servant girls of the high priest came, and seeing Peter warming himself, she looked at him and said, You also were with the Nazarene Jesus. But he denied it, saying, I neither know nor understand what you mean. And he went out into the gateway, and the rooster crowed. And the servant girl saw him and began again to say to the bystanders, This man is one of them. But again he denied it. And after a little while, the bystanders again said to Peter, Certainly you are one of them, for you are a Galilean. But he began to invoke a curse on himself and to swear, I do not know this man of whom you speak. And immediately the rooster crowed a second time. And Peter remembered how Jesus had said to him, "Before the rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times." And he broke down and wept. All right, so that was Mark chapter 14, verse 51 through 72. We're now going to do the Bible study for the entire Mark chapter 14. We've been reading Mark chapter 14 over the course of 3 days. It's not a long chapter, but esv.org, their year reading Bible schedule, splits the New Testament up, some of the books up into like 2 or 3 days, just so that we can have enough. So that way we can read both the Old and the New Testament every day. There's less books of the New Testament. So if we didn't split it up, we'd finish the New Testament before we finish the Old Testament. So that's why they split it up into days. Okay, so Mark chapter 14 Bible study. What was Jesus anointed with at Bethany? Mary anointed Jesus with an expensive perfume, the sister of Lazarus, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Who would betray Jesus? The bread and wine represented Jesus' body and blood given for forgiveness of sins and to defeat death. At the Lord's Supper, what did the bread and the wine represent? The bread and wine represented Jesus' body and blood given for forgiveness of sins and to defeat death. What would Peter do before the night was over? I feel like I read, okay, I'm going to do this over. I feel like I read one of the wrong questions for the answer before. Okay. All right. I'm going to start over. Mark chapter 14 Bible study. What was Jesus anointed with at Bethany? Mary anointed Jesus with an expensive perfume, the sister of Lazarus, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Who would betray Jesus? Judas Iscariot would betray Jesus. Yeah, that's what I did. I read question number 3's answer for question number 2. All right. So now question number 3. At the Lord's Supper, what did the bread and the wine represent? The bread and the wine represented Jesus' body and blood given for forgiveness of sins and to defeat death. What would Peter do before the night was over? Peter would deny knowing Jesus 3 times. What conditions may cause us to fall to temptation? If we are not watching for spiritual attacks and praying regularly, and if we are fatigued and stressed, we can become weak and fall into temptation. All right, so that was Mark chapter 14 Bible study, and we are now done for the day. A quick recap of what we did today. We read from the Old Testament, Deuteronomy chapters 23, 24, and 25, and then we did the Bible studies for Deuteronomy chapters 23, 24, and 25, and then we went on over to the New Testament and finished Mark chapter 14 by reading verse 51 through 72, and then we just did the Bible study for the entire Mark chapter 14. So we're now done for today. I love you guys. God loves you guys. You are important. You matter. You are enough. You are valuable, and you are worthy. And you are a Jesus Christ champion. And I love you guys, and I'm excited for you on this journey. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for day 74. Love you lots.